Hey everyone, my name's Jason. I'm a solo game developer living in Sweden, working on my dream little project, and we'll see how it goes. And this video is a follow-up video to the previous video, okay? So I'm actually recording this after making the rest of this video because I had decided to split the previous video up into two parts because the first part was more of like a demonstration and we looked at level design. That was the progress that we made in my game, and this video is more of a technical deep dive onto new features, how those things work, taking a look at under the hood at some of the systems, and then at the end I wrap it all up by taking the quest that I demonstrated in the previous video, so I highly recommend you watch that video, taking that quest and stepping through a segment of its code to see how does that cutscene system run and process that quest. I think that that's a nice way to tie up this duo of these two videos. So without further ado, enough yapping. I'll throw it over to Past Jace. He'll take it away and tell you all about the new features that have been added to the game in the past couple months. Okay, so this next part of the video, what I want to talk about are the new features that I've actually worked on, and so there's actually just a few kind of like brand new features, and then there's going to be like a lot of extension features to basically something that already existed, which was the cutscene system, and how that has become much more robust. Okay, so let's start with the new things first. The first thing that I want to show you all is, if I launch the game real quick, I've enabled a thing called streamer mode, right? And this is basically, I think I talked about this in one of the other devlogs, that I wanted a way to censor the dialogue in the game so that, you know, I can safely stream the development on the game without spoiling too much of the story. I've spoiled one quest for you so far, but yeah. So if we go to talk to this person now, streamer mode is on, and this says, from Livewell, why? Is the dialogue command active? If yes, then I just broke the fourth wall a bit. That one's from Deflute. And so basically what I've done is I've actually created a system which people who watch my live streams can contribute dialogue, text and lines and yeah, dialogue basically to the game, so that when I'm on streamer mode, instead their lines pop up. So this is like the user Deflute who submitted this dialogue, and it randomly picked his there. I think this has been a lot of fun because people have had a lot of fun with it in on stream. It's very interactive. They could just do that while I'm working. And then also it's funny what can kind of happen when you get accidental, like coincidental, like messages that follow each other that make sense in a weird way sometimes. So that kind of stuff is really fun as well. So I had a lot of fun making this feature, and this allows me to do more development stuff on stream without leaking too much. And yeah, it's a fun feature. The next feature that I made is a thing called queue markers, and the queue markers are just basically markers that I can put in the world for where I want something to move to or spawn at or something, right? But it's like a visual representation. So here in the editor here, if I turn on, we actually have some queue markers here. If we have this queue marker here, this is where the car goes to, right? So I visually put this location in the world, right? And then in my code here, I can find whatever queues I want. So this is like the car end thing here. And when I, and then if I try find car, here, queue car end, this one. And this is where I move the car towards that location. And so instead of specifying here in code some like XY values here, where I can't really see what those XY values actually correspond to on the level, I instead just make a queue marker here, and then I can just use that instead, and the car will drive towards this location. The other cool thing about this is that if I change the level, all I need to do is move the queue marker around, and I don't have to actually touch the code. The car will still drive towards that queue marker, so it doesn't really matter. So that's pretty nice. And then I made camera queue markers, and that's basically this here. It's the same thing as a queue marker, but it also has, see this purple rectangle? This is what the camera sees. So it's just an additional little feature to queues that show what can the camera see. So I can kind of visualize on the screen what you'll roughly be able to see if the camera moves to this location, basically. And so you might remember the bit in the flashback where you could see the guy by the dumpster, and then the car comes by and the camera pans over to the car, and then it pans across with the car, and then it pans back up to the guy. That's basically using these camera queue markers. So we pan to camera intro end here. That's the first point, because the camera starts here at intro start. It pans up from here to here, and then it pans from, when the car comes, it pans from here down to the camera car start here, and then it pans across to this location, and then it pans back up again. So having this like visual thing here, and I can just place these around, are super helpful. So that's why the cue markers are there. Another feature that I added was an audio manager. I didn't have an audio manager before. Godot does have obviously the ability to just play audio. And what the audio manager does is it's just a wrapper around Godot stuff to figure out how do I want to handle playing music, fading music out, cross-fading music, and all these kind of like random scenarios, or how do I want to handle playing sound effects? How do I want to expose that to the rest of the code, use it with a cutscene system, all that kind of stuff. So that wrapper is just for that. It's not super too much, although I did do a lot of work when it comes to fading out music or fading in music, being able to specify how long the fade is. If I'm fading between two songs, do I want to crossfade them, or do I want to fade one out and then the other one in? And how long is that duration supposed to be? A lot of these sort of like helper functions that just kind of take care of that for me, so that when I'm scripting my cutscenes, I don't have to think about things too much. I just say, start playing this song and fade it in over 1 second, and it just kind of does it. It takes care of everything else under the hood. So that's what the audio manager does for me. It also does things like take user settings into account to ensure that all the audio uses the user's specified volume. Now, I don't have any way to specify volume right now. It's just a variable in a file, but it does use that variable. And when I do start using creating like settings menus, that's what the variable will actually be used for. So yeah, so that's that feature, audio manager. Cool. Okay, so the next big area of work that happened were these cutscene actions. So I haven't really done a deep dive in my cutscene system yet, but the way that the cutscene system works I'm gonna see if I can do a quick and dirty explanation. Basically, the way that my cutscenes work are that it's a queue system. And I've talked about this a little bit in my dialogue video. I'll leave that in the cards as well, where that when I'm pushing dialogue, I push the dialogue to a queue, and then one by one, it pulls dialogue out of the queue and it puts it onto the screen, basically. And I had an animation for that in that video, and I'll put it on the screen here. And it's exactly the same thing, but instead of dialogue coming out and appearing on the screen, what's now, the way that the system has now become is that dialogue as well are technically part of cutscenes, and a cutscene is a queue of cutscene actions, which could be dialogue, but it could be anything else. It could be moving something, it could be loading a level, it could be updating quests, it could be giving an item, it could be playing an animation, starting music, whatever. These are all cutscene actions. And the way that the system works is that I just queue up a bunch of actions in a queue, and then I say, go for it, cutscene, and then the cutscene just plays. It just goes one thing at a time in the queue. Now, this is really good and is working really well for me. I really like it, but there are some edge cases that need to be handled. Well, what happens if I want to play two cutscene actions at the same time? What if I want a character to move and the camera pan at the same time? What if I want the camera to pan and the screen to fade out at the same time, right? So there's all sorts of like these little gotchas that are in that thing, but all of that has sort of been accounted for. And the way that this sort of works is that if we look here on the left, you can see a bunch of cutscene actions here. And the thing I like about these is that each individual one is its own contained class. If we take move, for example, this is all it is. It's not too much. And all of these cutscene actions basically have a run function. So when it's time for the action to run, it runs this code, right? And this one just tells something to move, right? But some things are a little bit trickier. So this is shake, and this keeps running. And basically this run function returns true when the task is done. So this shake here keeps returning false while it is shaking, basically. And so this task is technically not done until this, the shake is done. So that some of these can be a little bit more complex. What's a good complex one? Yeah, so like this block action here is a bit trickier. This is a bit more confusing. But this one here is basically an action that doesn't allow the cutscene system to proceed until all other actions before it are complete, or until a specified action is complete. And that's basically what this does. So some of these get really tricky, but the thing I really like about it is that I can add any kind of action and I can push those to the queue, and it becomes really nice to kind of work with. So that's how this works. So basically a lot of the work that I have done is adding a bunch of these things. And so some of the things that I added were things like camera panning, right? So the ability to pan the camera and to call that from a cutscene, camera shaking. There's a updating quest complete, quest start, updating quest progression. These are new as well. So within the cutscene, when we get to a certain point, the cutscene actually updates your quest status. That happens too. We've got some other ones here for playing sound effects. We've got more for background music to play background music. So that you can see the name of it here, and then there's the functionality for it, or to resume music, to stop music, and with support of all the fading and all that kind of stuff, and whether or not we want to block on the fade and wait till the fade is done, and all this kind of like things basically. Yeah, so there's been a whole bunch of like different cutscene actions that have been added in order to make this work. Another cutscene action that I really like that I sort of added as well is this one here called cutscene action deferred call, and this is something that we're going to talk about soon. This is this also solves another downside to the fact that I have my cutscenes in a queue. We'll talk about that in a moment. Another feature actually that was added as well was this. I don't know what it's called, okay, but it's like basically I call it setting the stage. And so one thing that you can kind of see here in the level is you can see that there's like a bunch of chatters here, right? And you can see that there's the shady guys here. But do you remember that in the flashback, they weren't there? They weren't there. The shady guy wasn't here in the dumpster. The beanie guy was here in the dumpster. And you may not have noticed, but maybe I could put it on the screen, but when the camera panned down to the car, there were no chatters here either. So they were all gone. So what happened there, right? And so there's, in my mind, again, I don't know if there's a proper name for this, but in my mind, there's like you want to set the stage for any specific cutscene. Sometimes you want certain NPCs there and sometimes you don't. And so basically I made this system where, let me see here. Basically here I have the scene actors nodes, and then I have little containers under them. And for any cutscene that I have, I can specify specific actors that are going to be there for it. So right now I have the default eye open, so you can see all the default actors that would be here. That's these people, okay? But if I turn this off, they'll be invisible. You can't see them anymore. And what I can then do is I can turn on the beanie guy flashback eye, and you can see what is here. And you can see that there's a car here, right? And the beanie guy's here. Right? And so what happens every time that I load a level is that if there isn't a cutscene running that's specifying a specific cutscene, whatever, then it just loads the default, right? And so this is the normal loading of a level. It loads the default scene actors, and then it deletes the rest. Otherwise, if you specify one, it loads that cutscene's actors. So in this case, Beanie and the car. And then it deletes the rest. And so that's like a nice little feature there. The next thing that I did a lot of work on was level loading. So I've already had level loading and asynchronous level loading, which means you load the level that you're going to in the background. But in this particular case, there was a bit of work that had to get done when it came to cutscenes, because I had the ability to swap levels in a cutscene. I even had the ability to fade out a level, swap the level, and then fade in the new level. But then I stopped having the ability to like, well, what if I wanted to start a camera pan as the level was fading in? I didn't have that option because the whole swapping level action was blocking anything else from running. And so what I realized I had to do was separate level loading and level swapping so that I had more control over if I want to run special commands in the middle of a level swap, basically, or at the beginning of a level before the fade-in happens, these kinds of things. So I added some other cutscene actions for that, and for that you can sort of see here. If we look at this part here, we can see that I load the level using this cutscene action, and then I swap using that, and then before that I fade it out. And then we call this function here, and then I do some screen setup. I do like the shitty sepia effect on the game. I hide the main character. I start playing music and start fading that in. I start fading in the screen. I start positioning the camera. I do all this stuff as the fade in happens, basically. And that's the benefit of doing this. Now, I lose the simplicity of just simply changing a level, but I do have other convenience functions that take care of that for me if I need it. But in this particular case, having it laid out like this was more beneficial. One other thing that I came across, one other issue that I came across was, in this case, I have a flashback, right? So we flash back to Beanie Guy by the dumpster, and then we return back to the karaoke. Now, you would think naively that you just load the main level where Beanie Guy is, and then you just load the karaoke part again. But the karaoke level has a whole host of like default things, like default states. My character, for example, was not at the door where you normally load into the level. He was by the Beanie Guy and talking to him, right? And so one other thing that I realized was I didn't really have support for loading back a level and then setting everything up to be in a specific state that it was in before. But luckily, the solution for this was quite easy, in Godot at least. So basically what I do is I now cache my previous levels. So when I load the main level to watch Beanie Guy's flashback, I don't delete the previous level. It just kind of floats in memory off screen, and because it's not part of the game tree anymore, it's not ticking, it's not processing, it's just preserved. It's like cryogenically frozen or something. And then the cutscene plays, and then when I go back, instead of loading the karaoke bar, I just take the old one and I put it back in. I just swap that back in, and everything is back as it was before the flashback began. And that is the kind of system that I have now. And I have control over to choose whether I want to do this caching, whether I don't. I have the ability to choose flashbacks that switch to multiple scenes in any order. There's no restrictions on this kind of thing. I can just specify whatever, and then just kind of good to go. So this is really nice, and it's nice that I have level caching. It also means it reduces load times under some situations, and maybe I can reduce it in other situations, but I don't know how just yet. So one last thing that I want to do real quick is I want to step through a segment of the code with you all, just so you can sort of see how the cutscene action works, and hopefully I can have the flashback section of the quest for you to follow along with. Okay, so let's take a look here. So at the end of, before the flashback, there's some chat dialogue that happens, and then we fade out, and then we load the new level, and then we swap. And this waits until the level is loaded and swapped, and then we're also blocking to make sure we're waiting. And then I have this thing called push action deferred call. And the reason this happens is, one thing to remember is the cutscene system is a queue. This doesn't run here, right? The code is here. When this is run, this block is run, BGM resume is run, it is not run yet. These actions are run when it is that cutscene action's turn in the queue. So that's at some point in the future. So if we take into account this part here where we're trying to find queue markers that are on the level, we can't find them until the new level is loaded. The level hasn't loaded here. These are just cutscene actions. These are not the actions themselves running. So that's why I've added this push action deferred call, which is another cutscene action that when it's executed, it calls another function. In this case, it's this function, which then does other things. And so in this case, this function, and this is gonna then get called after these things run. So this gets called, and then things get loaded. And now we have access to these queues because the level has loaded, and now we can continue with the flashback. And the first thing we do is we push screen effects sepia tone. It's terrible sepia, it's just brown, basically, brown modulation. But we push that, and remember that the screen is black at this point, so you can't see that this effect has snapped into position. The screen is black, we've hidden it. We hide the main character because we don't need him here. It's all about Beanie Guy. And then we fade in our sad piano music, and we fade in the camera at the same time. So the camera and the, they don't block each other here. So they start fading at the same time. We also then swap to a cutscene camera. Cutscene camera has all the effects on it, like moving and panning. We move the camera into its start position, which is a camera cue, which is the intro start. And we start panning from the camera intro to the camera end. And after a delay, we play a little bit of a sound effect of Beanie Guy rummaging through the trash. We delay a little bit more, and then we begin some dialogue of the Beanie Guy talking about, I was down on my luck and all that stuff. And that keeps playing, right? And it blocks until the dialogue, that segment of the dialogue is done. After that segment is done, the car animation starts playing. Actually, this will have started running at the time of the cutscene. This is not a cutscene action. This is the car is running in the background this whole time, actually. And then you push the delay. So a little bit of a delay, and then the music starts fading out as the car's music starts playing. And as that happens, the beanie guy looks to the right in the direction of the car, and there's another delay. And then we start panning towards the car. So this is the push camera pan. We're panning from the intro end position to the car's starting position. We start moving the car from its position to the car's queue end position at a rate of 250 units at speed. And then we block. And we block right now on the pan only. So we're saying here, do not proceed into this part until this pan is complete, even if the car is not done moving. Right? So this is not a normal block. This is blocking only on the pan action. And then we do it again. We say pan up to the beanie guy. Sorry, this is to the camera end, not to the beanie guy. There's going to be delay, and dialogue will start, and then we block again, but we're only blocking on the pan. So we don't let anything else happen after this point. Don't let any of this happen until the pan is complete, even if the dialogue is complete. Okay, if you spam E and you go through the dialogue, it waits until the pan is complete. And then this is here where we go back to the beanie guy, and music resumes. Small delay. Beanie guy looks left because that's where the car went. We block. We wait for that. We delay a little bit. We talk a little bit more. There's a bit of a delay for the inspiring part where he looks down and says inspiring. And then we block. Wait for the dialogue to complete. And then we delay a little bit and transition out, and we go back to the cached version of the karaoke bar. And then after all that's done, and after we've loaded the karaoke bar and everything's swapped in and out, we push action deferred, and we resume the quest from that point on. And so that's how basically the cutscene system works. And then, of course, further down in the quest, if I keep going, we can see update quest progression, and this is where we can update things like our quest stage and things like that. So yeah, that's how this works, essentially. That's the cutscene system, and that's all the work that has been done. So, I don't know if this video is working out well or not, because it's a lot. It is a whole lot. I don't know how much I actually cut out from the script. Who knows? But in any case, maybe I'll leave it fairly unedited. I'm not sure. Maybe it would be better to just leave it all in here, because what's most important to me is that I document this all, and for the people who are interested, you get more content to chew on. I think that's a good thing. But in any case, thank you very much for watching the video. If you made it through all of it, thank you. Huge thank you. I hope that this is really interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts about the quest and if you thought it was fun or not, and the progress and all that kind of stuff. Thank you so much for supporting me and watching these videos. I appreciate it. As for what I plan on doing next, there are a few things that I want to work on, but I think none of them are as monolithic as what I've been working on now, which I think is really nice for my brain. Something that I've been thinking about working on are maybe like a basic save system, getting that up and running. User settings could be really fun as well. Maybe more work on the pause menu. That could be interesting. There are some more mini games that I want to do too. And of course, there are more quests. So I'm not really sure what I want to embark on yet. I'll see how it goes. I'm going to chill for a couple days because I worked really hard to get this together. And I'm really, as I said, I'm really glad that there's no super monolithic task that I need to do right this very second. So just going to try get some easy wins, I think, over the next month. But thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Do consider leaving a like and subscribing. Thank you so much for watching if you made it all the way to the end, and I will catch you all next time. Take care. Have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.